The Departed was released in 2006, starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Billy Costigan, a Massachusetts state trooper who was sent undercover into the city's Irish mob run by Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson. Meanwhile, Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon, is a mob-ball working for the state police at the behest of Costello. The plot of the film revolves around the two moles trying to ascertain each other's identity. The film was directed by Martin Scorsese and earned him his first Academy Award for Best Directing. The film also won Best Picture, Best Editing, and Best Adapted Screenplay for writer William Monahan, grossed over $250 million, and earned rave reviews, with some even crowning it the best film of its decade. It's also one of the most atrocious pieces of storytelling I have ever bared witness to, with a plot riddled with holes, inconsistencies, terrible character work, meaningless scenes, both over and underwriting, and at least one pointless and borderline offensive homosexual subplot. So first I'm going to run through the film showing how it is an absolute steam pile of shit, and then I'm going to talk about the two main characters and how they are both steam piles of shit. I'm also going to reference the film's source material, the 2002 Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs, talking about the changes the Monahan made and how it impacts the story. Now, Infernal Affairs actually had 2 sequels which were somewhat incorporated into The Departed, but for the sake of streamlining, I'm only going to talk about the first film. Also, don't take this video as a huge endorsement on Infernal Affairs, because while it did a few things much better than The Departed, Infernal Affairs has just as many flaws. And also, a quick disclaimer for the talent involved in this film: the failures of The Departed are almost exclusively due to writing and editing. I would say about like 95% writing and 5% editing. So the movie starts off by establishing the time period. Okay. Now, the stock footage you see at the beginning of the film is that of the Boston busing crisis of the mid-1970s, which was a result of the desegregation of Boston public schools by establishing a busing system which served both predominantly white and black neighborhoods. What does this have to do with the plot or overarching themes of the film?
Nothing.
But it at least establishes the time period. That is, unless you have no idea when the busing protests took place, or even what the hell they were, in which case this does you absolutely no good. But the script identifies this as taking place in 1974, and that is roughly when the crisis began, so there you go. We then establish Frank Costello as a respected and feared local mob boss in South Boston. The opening shows how he meets Colin Sullivan, who was brought under Costello's wing as a young boy and later grows up to serve as Costello's mole in the Massachusetts State Police. Okay, so then the movie cuts forward to Colin training to become a state trooper. So here is where we come across one of the film's big weaknesses that is present throughout a good portion of the film, which I'm going to refer to as time management. In this scene, we get Colin training to become a state trooper. But then we also see a shot of Billy training to become a state trooper, giving the immediate impression that these two are in training together, or at least are in training at the same time. But then we see Colin graduating from his training and becoming a state trooper. Then we get a few cuts of Billy, still in training, while Colin is shown participating in a drug raid, showing that he is working cases. The montage ends with Colin reporting to the Special Investigations Unit, being congratulated by Captain Queenan for passing his detective's exam. After this, Billy comes in and he is recruited by Queenan and Dignam to go undercover, which they do before Billy even graduates. So it takes about 6 months to complete trooper training, so Colin graduated from his training and became a detective while Billy hasn't even finished his training yet? What? Okay, so if this seems confusing, it's because the editing makes it seem like Colin and Billy are in training at the same time, while in actuality, these two storylines take place 4 fucking years apart. In the script, Colin goes through his training and graduates, becoming a state trooper. Then it skips ahead 4 years to Billy's training. It is around this time that Colin takes his detective's exam, which requires about 4 to 5 years of experience, so that adds up. Colin gets promoted to SIU, while Billy is taken prematurely out of his training to be sent undercover. Why the film omits this time jump and is edited to make it seem like these two separate time periods are taking place simultaneously, I have no fucking idea. So Colin is in SIU, and Billy, given his family's connections to organized crime through his uncle Jackie, is sent undercover. He is kicked out of the academy and sent to prison for a BS assault and battery charge. Queenan mentions that they need Billy to do enough prison time to convince everyone that this isn't a setup. Then Billy goes to prison, which is portrayed in like 4 shots. No, literally 4 shots. He's put in a holding cell, he works out in his cell, he is led out of his cell, and he is discharged out of prison. He goes to his aunt's house where we find out he was in prison for 4 months. So yeah, those 4 shots were supposed to portray 4 months. that's okay, whatever. And actually, come to think of it, he says he was kicked out of the Stadies 4 months ago, so it may be even less than 4 months that he would have been in jail. And even if it was, would like 4 months really be long enough to convince anyone that this isn't a setup? Like, okay, whatever. So the next sequence is after Billy gets out of jail, and he is presumably trying to infiltrate Costello's gang. He starts off by doing coke deals with his cousin. Now, I guess he's doing this to try to get Costello's attention, since his cousin mentions Costello forbids them from pushing coke in that area. Except when the cousin mentions this, Billy doesn't seem to know about it. So, like, was he doing it purposefully to get Costello's attention? Or if he didn't know, he wasn't allowed to do... okay, whatever. So this scene leads to a short scene where Billy is introduced to Mr. French, Costello's number one. So now Mr. French knows Billy is out and about in Southie, and after he bashes a fucker's skull in, sees he has a short fuse. But Billy still needs to find a way to get Costello's attention, which is very convenient since in the next scene he just so happens to come across 2 Jersey gangsters while he is eating breakfast. He beats the ever-loving shit out of them, and beating up the 2 gangsters gets Costello's attention and ultimately leads to Costello bringing in Billy as part of his inner circle. So we're like 30 minutes in and the film is like already jumped the shark. First, during their first meeting, Costello literally spells out Queenan's entire undercover plan.
Plus, I don't know if it's beyond some fucking cock prick like Queenan to pull you out of the Stadies and send you after me.
And yet in the next scene, Costello brings Billy under his wing. So like, does Costello just like decide to trust him? He assumes this kid may be undercover, but then just lets him in anyway? Okay. Between their first meeting and Costello recruiting Billy, this would have been a good spot for like a scene where Billy needs to prove himself, like commit a crime, like carrying out a murder with Mr. French or something. Just something to prove that he really isn't a cop. It's just fucking weird that Billy beats up 2 mobsters and then Costello, who suspects Billy may be undercover, just lets him into his inner circle. Part of Costello's motivation may have to do with the fact that he knew Billy's uncle and father, so maybe he feels like a father figure to him. But I'm actually going to get to that later in the video, so hang tight. So the next portion of the film shows Billy working with Costello's crew, participating in hits, collections, etc. Now, if you feel like I haven't talked much about Colin during this video, it's because he really doesn't do anything for like the first entire hour of the fucking movie. Like, he's an SIU doing stuff, but none of it really is that significant to the plot, so it's just really bad pacing. While Billy is working with Costello, he is also attending his appointments with a court-appointed shrink, Madeline, played by Vera Farmiga, who just so happens to be the woman that Colin has entered a relationship with, because of course she fucking is. Quick aside, Madeline is a completely pointless and just horribly written character who just makes no fucking sense. In her first scene with Billy, she fails miserably as a counselor and then contradicts herself like 4 fucking times in a single fucking scene.
I just think we should have a few more meetings before we even talk about prescription.
Look. You fit the model of drug-seeking behavior.
What's this?
My card and a prescription for 20 lorazepam. If you're in distress, I will help you. I'm transferring you to another counselor.
And then at the end, she agrees to go on a date with Billy because, plot, I don't know. Okay, so then we get this scene with Dignam and Queenan meeting up with Billy as like a staff report or something. So here's another instance of poor time management. Billy mentions he's been doing this for a year.
It's been a year of this. I've had enough of this shit.
Now, I guess he means being undercover, but we don't know if that also includes the 4 months in jail. It doesn't really make it clear. So he has been undercover in Costello's crew for, it seems like at the very least, 8 months. But then how long has he been seeing Madeline, the shitty shrink? The scene with Captain Willard and Marky Mark happens right after the scene with Madeline. So has he been seeing her for 8 months? Like, from the scene, it makes it seem like it was their first meeting or like their second or third at most. So this is what I mean when I'm talking about bad time management. It's like scenes just happen back to back, but there's no guides or any indication as to when these scenes occur and in what order or how much time has passed between them. And it just gets fucking confusing, and the editing is done in a way where they kind of hope you don't notice this and don't think too much about it. But I do, and it really pisses me off. Okay, so back to the scene in the car with Queenan and Dirk Diggler. So this scene is where they first mention that they think there is a mole in the Special Investigations Unit.
I think Costello's got a spy inside the Special Investigation Unit.
Okay, like, why do they think this? What makes them think they have a mole? Good Will Hunting also mentions the possibility that there is a mole in the state police, even before this.
We think Costello's got a rat in the state police.
But again, why? Like, what makes them think they have a mole? We don't see any indication of this before this. They just okay, whatever, fuck it. We're like an hour into the fucking film and the plot hasn't even gotten going yet, so now Costello and his crew, including Billy, are selling these things called microprocessors to the Chinese government. The same microprocessors that got stolen earlier in the film, it doesn't fucking matter. Don't worry about it. It's inconsequential. Fuck it. So the state police are also listening on this meeting. Now, this is the scene where Costello discovers that he has a mole in his crew, since he instructs them to turn off their phones, but Billy keeps his on and tells Queenan when the buyers are there. And this scene is also supposedly when the cops discover there is a mole in their organization, since someone tipped Costello off to turn his crew's phones off. Except, like I said before, the cops already knew they had a mole, but so like I don't know when they found that out beforehand, but whatever. Like, did the scene in the car with Mark and Captain Queenan and Matt Damon earlier, did those happen after the microprocessor scene? And it just, I don't know. Fuck it, dude. Like, shit. Okay, so now Costello knows he has a mole in his crew and instructs Colin to sniff him out. Okay, so the next pretty much half of the film is about Costello's hunt to ascertain who the mole is in his organization. But this is like the biggest plot hole in the entire film. How the fuck does Costello not know who the mole is? Like, gee, isn't Mr. French, who has been his most trusted confidant and has committed multiple murders on his behalf? Is it Fitzy or Delahunt, who have been with Costello for years and have also committed dozens of felonies on his behalf? Or maybe, just maybe, is it Billy? You know, the kid who has been in your crew for like less than a year, who used to be a trainee for the exact same organization you think has infiltrated your crew, who you yourself suspected as possibly being an undercover cop, who looks like he's having a fucking panic attack 24/7. The entire plot of the film rests on the idea that Costello needs to find the mole in his crew, and yet completely ignores the fact that the answer is painfully obvious. See, in Infernal Affairs, DiCaprio's counterpart has been undercover for a whopping 10 years, and he didn't even join the crew of Jack Nicholson's counterpart until he was 6 years in. So he's actually one of the most trusted people in the boss's crew with the reputation to back it up, which makes the hunt for the mole more believable. So meanwhile, Colin is assigned to Internal Affairs to find out who the mole is, which, like I mentioned earlier, is odd considering the fact that he was already looking for the mole earlier in the film. Like, this isn't even an editing mistake, this is literally written like this in the script. I don't know what the writer was doing, if they just lost track, I don't know. Oh, and by the way, it's also revealed around this time that Costello is also an FBI informant, and Billy finds this out from this guy, a druggy loser. This guy, he somehow knows that Costello is an FBI informant because some reason. Like French, Colin, no one else knows this, but for some reason this dirtbag does. It doesn't make any fucking sense and is extremely contrived, seeing as the only reason this scene is in the movie is to set up something later on, which doesn't make any sense. But whatever, we'll get to that later. So Costello has his entire crew give over all their personal info so Colin can cross-reference it with the police files to find the rat. I don't know why he does this, since when Colin eventually does this with Billy's name, it doesn't even pop up since his file is sealed, so it would have been completely moot anyway. And like, why are they meeting up face to face in this porno theater? Like, I didn't know if it was like a nod to Taxi Driver or something, but it's like fucking weird. Like, Costello could have left the envelope somewhere for Colin to pick it up. Costello even mentions it's fucking stupid for them to meet up face to face, since Costello is under constant surveillance. And also, like, what is up with the way they keep contact? Like, sometimes Colin changes his battery before contacting Costello, other times he doesn't. There's literally a scene where Costello calls him on his fucking home telephone. So then Costello hands him the envelope, but Billy has followed them there. Billy chases Colin, but isn't able to ascertain his identity. Colin gets some camera footage of the back of Billy's head, but he can't see his face. Damn. All he has is approximate height, build, and like, you can totally fucking tell this is Billy, even from the back. Like, this is fucking stupid. Also around this time, Billy goes over Madeline's house, fucks her, and presumably impregnates her, seeing as Colin is impotent. Oh, did I forget to mention that? Probably because it has nothing to do with anything in this fucking movie. The whole who is the father subplot is stupid and doesn't matter. Madeline and Billy have no chemistry, and it isn't even clear why they are banging except for plot convenience. Also, why does Madeline still have shit in her apartment? She mentioned earlier that the movers had already came. Movers take all of your shit. Why the fuck would they leave like her fucking bed frame and like a bunch of boxes? Like, was this scene supposed to happen before the moving in scene? It just... I don't know, dude. Also, just to give some like frame of reference as to how like shitty this is, this whole who is the father subplot, this was literally a fucking Gossip Girl episode. Okay, so now Billy, realizing that Costello was going a bit nuts, I mean, like, not nuts enough to just kill Billy on the very probable chance that he is the rat, but whatever, meets with Queenan begging him to pull him out, which I really don't understand why he didn't do this sooner. Like, after Queenan was told by Billy that Costello was an FBI informant, what use is Billy? Whatever he finds on Costello is just gonna be squashed by the FBI, so why not just pull Billy out ASAP? And how the fuck would Billy even get out anyway? Like, he'd probably have to ditch town. Why would he still get his money? I don't. So Colin actually put a tail on Queenan and sends the rest of Costello's crew after him as he assumes Queenan is meeting with the rat. Billy is able to escape, but the crew kills Queenan. This is the worst fucking thing they could have possibly done. It's like there's no reason to do it, and it puts more heat on them, and now they can't even use Queenan to lead them to the rat. Also, this scene where Queenan dies, I think is supposed to be a big emotional moment for Billy, but it really isn't. In Infernal Affairs, Queenan's counterpart is named Superintendent Wong. Now, he's kind of an amalgamation of Queenan and Dignam, acting as a father figure to Chan, DiCaprio's counterpart, but also a bit of a ballbuster, like Dignam is. So in Infernal Affairs, Superintendent Wong is the only one who knows that Chan is a cop. So when he dies, it's a big moment, because now there is literally no one on Earth who knows that he is a cop. But in The Departed, Queenan dies, yeah, but Dignam is still alive and knows Billy's true identity. So it's really not that big of a deal, and this actually comes into play later. We'll get to that. So Billy is able to escape the roof and shows up at the building just as the rest of Costello's crew exits. Delahunt is fatally wounded, but basically tells Billy that he knows he is the rat. He didn't tell Costello or anyone else because, as is evident in the script more than the movie, he likes Billy and doesn't want him to get killed. This is stupid since Delahunt and Billy exchange 10 fucking words to each other over the whole movie, so we don't see any sort of bond built between them, but okay. And also, Delahunt wasn't able to tell them that Billy was the mole, but why wouldn't the rest of the crew question why Billy wasn't present when they killed Queenan? Fitzy, who's a fucking psycho, he just buys this BS excuse about being in a grocery store with no phone signal. Why the fuck wouldn't you have phone signal at the grocery store? So Queenan is dead and shit has hit the fan. Dignam is pissed, so he resigns, I think. First he says he's taking 2 weeks, but then Colin says in the next scene he resigned. I don't know. Anyway, Colin finds Queenan's cell phone and talks to Billy over the phone. Apparently he can't tell it's Billy by his voice, despite the fact that he doesn't have an Irish accent like Fitzy, and sounds 20 years younger than everybody else in Costello's crew, but whatever the fuck. Okay, so then he finds out that Costello was an FBI informant by reading it in Queenan's notebook, which is just sitting there for anyone to see. So now that Colin knows Frank is an FBI informant and fearing that his cover is at risk, he works with Billy to set Frank up. Frank is going to meet up at one of his shipping containers to unload a shipment of drugs. I don't know why the boss and pretty much every single person in his main crew is doing this together. I don't know why, it fucking beats me. But of course the cops ambush them, killing everyone except Frank, who escapes into the construction yard. Okay, so here's one of the major changes from Infernal Affairs, which completely warps how we see Colin's character. So after Frank makes it into the construction yard, Colin finds Frank and confronts him about being an FBI informant. Frank opens fire and Colin returns, killing Frank. In Infernal Affairs, the same chain of events happen. Colin's counterpart, named Lau, makes a plan with Chan to take down the mob boss. The mob boss takes a run for it, but Lau confronts him in the parking structure and kills him in cold blood. The reason he does this is because he feels guilt about the death of Superintendent Wong and finally wants to stop being a mole. He has done this for 10 years and wants to change his life and start being a good guy. He kills the boss because he makes the choice to become a better man, making him a more layered and complex character. Whereas in The Departed, Colin only does this for self-preservation since he knows Frank is an FBI informant and fears that he is going to sell him out. So instead of making this decision one of him trying to turn a new leaf and become a good guy, it just makes Colin into a spineless little pussy. It was a stupid change and I don't know why they did it. Well, I kind of do. I'll bring it up later, but it's fucking stupid. So then Colin meets Billy, and after getting the password to his confidential file, is going to get Billy the money he was promised, and he can go home and get on with his life. Costello and the entire gang is dead, which means both Colin and Billy can go back to their respective lives scot-free. That is until Billy just so happens to see the envelope that Costello delivered to Colin at the movie theater, which is just laying on Colin's desk because fucking plot. But now we've come to the showdown. This is it. Billy finally knows who the mole is, the man he has spent so long looking for, sacrificed so much to find. It's time for the epic conclusion. And this is the point where this dirt pile of a movie loses its fucking shit and displays one of the most illogical and most contrived final acts to a film I have ever seen. Okay, so I'm going to put a stupid ass decision counter in the top corner there for the final act, and here we go. So Billy finds out that Colin is the mole, and immediately leaves the police station? Why the fuck does he do this? He just tipped Colin off that he knows he is the mole, which leads to Colin erasing his file. Why didn't Billy just keep his cool for 5 fucking minutes? He could have gotten his money, gotten his status as an undercover back, kept Colin in the dark, and then literally waltzed into the office the next fucking day and like tell Brown or someone what he knows. Or at the very least, he could buy himself some time. But no, he just leaves. This kid who has been under an insane amount of stress and has kept his cool in deadly situations makes the biggest lapse of judgment in the entire fucking film. Okay, so then it cuts to him visiting Madeline and giving her an envelope. Again, we have no sense of how long it has been since he fled the police station. Like, did Colin look for him? This guy knows he is a mole? Like, does he go to his house? Does he send someone after him? Like, it doesn't... Okay, whatever. Okay, so he gives Madeline the envelope. Now, we obviously don't know this yet, but we later find out that in this envelope are instructions to contact Dignam, informing him that Colin is the mole. And later on, I'm actually going to explain why that is a massive fucking plot hole, but we're going to get to that shortly. One sec. So the stupid butthole shitty therapist shows Colin a sonogram of a baby boy, obviously implied to be Billy's, which makes her even more of a stupid fucking bitch. Then she gets a letter in the mail addressed to Colin from, you guessed it, Billy. Obviously fearing that Billy is fucking her over for some reason, she opens the letter and realizes it is a recording of Colin's conversation with Frank earlier in the film. Colin comes out and she is furious with him. How the fuck does she realize that Colin is a bad guy from this tape? Like, does she know about the whole mole plot? Did Colin tell her? Does she even know who Costello is? Like, she listens to it like 10 seconds of the tape and then like seemingly understands that Colin is a mob mole and his entire life is a lie. Like, this is fucking stupid. Oh, and then the kicker is then she says this.
I thought I was the liar.
You're still a liar, you dumb cunt. Okay, then Colin calls Billy, and Billy says that Costello has a bunch of tapes proving that Colin is the mole, which completely comes out of fucking, absolutely fucking nowhere. In Infernal Affairs, at least that they show that the boss has the tapes earlier in the film, and that is how Chan finds them. But Billy says that Costello left them with his lawyer as his insurance policy. Like, insurance for what? In case Colin fucked him over? Like, what if he didn't get killed by Colin? Like, what if he just got hit by a fucking car? His dying wish would be give a big middle finger to Colin just fucking because? Like, what is it insurance for? And really, Billy is the one he trusted the most, the one who used to be a state trooper, the one who didn't stay in the bar that night, the one who was the only one not present when Queenan died. He is the one who he leaves the tapes to? Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, Jesus, fuck. Also, quick little aside, this tape revelation also means that the entire envelope plot point was completely unnecessary. Billy finds out that Colin's the mole due to the envelope, but in the very next scene it cuts to sometime after where Billy has already gotten the tapes from Costello's lawyer. So like the tapes would have shown who the mole was, so like why not just cut out the whole envelope thing? Just have Billy meet up with Colin, then leave, then later have Billy get the tapes, and then have him discover that Colin was the mole since he obviously knows his voice from their phone conversations and meeting him in person. In Infernal Affairs, the envelope thing actually makes sense since Chan, after discovering Lau is the mole via the envelope, then he goes and gets the tapes from the boss's desk himself. There's no lawyer plot or whatever. He just gets the tapes because he needs leverage over Lau. Okay, so Billy has the tapes implicating Sullivan as the mole, so naturally he has him meet on the rooftop where Queenan died because I fucking poetry? I don't know. Like, why the fuck does he do this? He has boxes of tapes proving that Colin is the mole. Like, why doesn't he just fucking waltz into the police station with a box? Or just, like, better yet, just walk into the police station with a boombox blaring the conversation you sent to Colin through the mail earlier. Also, Colin says that like he erased Billy so no one knows that he's a cop except Brown and Dignam and every single fucking person in the department who was in the building after Costello's death who must have seen Billy in Colin's office. And what exactly is Billy's plan here? Like, he has Colin meet him on the roof, and then Brown shows up, which he was apparently supposed to bring Dignam, but why didn't Billy bring Dignam himself? Like, why didn't he go to Dignam's house and talk to him and show him the tapes proving Colin is the mole? Like, did Dignam resign, by the way? Like even if Dignam resigned, like, who gives a shit? Like, go over there, like, show him the tapes, like, fuck. And why didn't Brown bring Dignam? Like, when Brown shows up, Dignam isn't even with him, so, like, did he try to find him and couldn't? Or did he just say fuck it and come alone? Like, what the fuck is going on? So Brown, seeing Billy pointing a gun at his sergeant's head, obviously draws on him. Billy says he has evidence that Colin is the rat. Of course, he didn't bring any. So then Billy says he's taking Colin downstairs to where? Like, to the police station? Like, you're gonna charge into the police station with a police sergeant at gunpoint screaming that he's Costello's rat without any of the so-called evidence you claim to have? Like, good plan. Like, even if Dignam showed up, you still don't have any evidence that he's the rat, so, like, what would you do at that point? Like, would you... So, as Billy is taking Colin downstairs in the elevator, this happens. Okay, so I have to give credit where credit is due. This is probably one of the most well-executed and shocking turn of events of the decade. Really well done, and a complete 180 done right. Unfortunately, this entire end here makes no fucking sense. How the fuck is Berrigan also a rat? We established that Costello meets Colin as a kid. When did he meet Berrigan? Why is Berrigan doing this? Like, maybe Costello did this to cover his bases, like he put a few moles in just in case one got outed or didn't progress far enough into the police force to be useful. But why does Berrigan know about Colin and Colin doesn't know about Berrigan? They were in the same fucking training class. Like, did Berrigan get turned later? Okay, so let's just go along with the stupid-ass assumption that Berrigan is also a mole and he knows about Colin. Maybe he was planted to keep an eye on Colin, whatever, let's just go with it. But, like, how the fuck does Berrigan know that Costello was an FBI informant? Colin, who has reached one of the highest echelons of the MSP, doesn't know about it and only found out about it due to a single journal entry from Queenan because Billy told him, and Billy knew this because some fucking random dude knew because some fucking reason. Okay, so let's give the writers another pass. Let's just say that Berrigan was assigned by Costello to be a mole and keep tabs on Colin. And let's say that somehow he also snuck into the room and found Queenan's diary and found out that Costello was an FBI rat. But then Berrigan says,
Costello was gonna sell us to the FBI.
How would he know that Costello was planning to sell them out? And why would even the FBI care? If Costello was the FBI's rat and Colin and Berrigan were helping him, wouldn't the FBI want Colin to help Costello? Like, wouldn't the FBI be psyched that Colin was doing the groundwork for them? Like, so he could keep Costello out of trouble, so, like, they could keep giving him information? I know I was going to explain the whole FBI thing, like I said earlier. So, the whole FBI plot with the boss being a rat too is only in The Departed and is not present in Infernal Affairs at all. The reason this is because Costello was framed after infamous Boston crime boss Whitey Bulger, who served as an FBI informant for decades while they basically gave him carte blanche to continue his organized crime operations in the Boston area. So since he was framed after him, they decided to add the whole FBI thing, which is a cool little trivia tidbit, but doesn't add anything to the film and just makes shit way more complicated than it needs to be. Also, I guess they added this to kind of drive home the theme of the film, which is, of course,
it's a nation of fucking rats.
Okay, so Berrigan kills Billy, then he kills Brown, and then he says, Colin, we have to stick together, we're the moles, we need to protect each other, from what? I don't know, whatever. But then for some reason, Colin kills Berrigan, because... Why does he do this? In Infernal Affairs, this makes sense, since Chan calls the police to meet him at the building where he meets with Lau. So when Chan is bringing Lau downstairs, he is literally bringing him into police custody. Lau kills Berrigan's counterpart because he needs a fall guy, since Chan already told the cops he has the mole in custody. But in The Departed, Billy hasn't told anyone about Colin, so now that Billy and Brown are dead, there's no reason to kill Berrigan. They could have just gone home and left these two there, but whatever, fucking forget it. Okay, freeze frame. Look at this scene. Can someone please tell me how Colin was able to come up with a story that would explain this mess in 20 minutes? He says Berrigan beat him up, but wouldn't they be able to tell this from forensics? So what was Colin's actual explanation as to what he was doing there and how this all went down? I like how the writer doesn't even have any idea because this next scene he's telling the story and they kind of purposely skip over it a little bit, and I think it's because the writer he didn't know what the fuck either and said fuck it, we'll just skip it. Okay, so then it jumps to Billy's funeral where they all recognize he's a cop. So how didn't Colin delete his file? How was he able to prove Billy was an informant? And how the hell did they have the picture of Billy in his dress blues from the Trooper Academy? Didn't he get pulled out before he graduated? I mean, maybe they take photos earlier, but whatever. So then Madeline is pissed at Colin and the whole baby thing and yada yada yada, no one gives a fuck. Cut to a while later and Colin comes home to be greeted by Dignam. Obviously the envelope that Billy gave to Madeline had instructions to contact Dignam and inform him that Colin was the mole. Okay, hold up. Remember when I said that Billy giving Madeline the envelope was a huge plot hole? This is it. So Billy said that he told Brown to bring Dignam to the roof to confront Colin. But he gave Madeline the envelope so that if something happened to him, she could contact Dignam. But he was planning on having Dignam meet him on the roof with Brown, so, like, what if Dignam and Brown were all killed? Like, then Madeline would have the envelope, which would tell her to contact Dignam, which, like, he'd be dead. So, like, what? So, like, maybe he gave her the envelope in case he was killed before he met Colin on the roof? But how much time has passed between Billy giving Madeline the envelope and the letter to Colin arriving? I mean, there's no reason Billy would wait, right? So, like, probably not very long. Also, Colin doesn't know about the tapes until Billy sends him the tapes, so why would Billy even be in fear for his life? Why would Colin risk killing Billy, someone who has no real evidence he is the mole and who doesn't even have a record of being a cop? So then Dignam kills Colin, and that's the end of the movie. Thank fucking Christ. But what happened to that huge box of tapes that Billy had given to him by Costello's lawyer? Are they at this place? Did the cops find them after Billy died? Did Colin break in and take them back? Will Colin eventually be outed as the mole inside? You know what? Like, the movie doesn't care, so I don't. Fuck this shit. Okay, so that was a rundown of the film. So now I'm going to give a little rundown of the two main characters, just so you can see how terribly written they really are. So let's start with Billy. Unlike his counterpart in Infernal Affairs, Billy has a good amount of character development. His uncle Jackie used to run with Costello's crew, and his father was, I guess, an acquaintance of Costello and his crew, yet worked at Logan Airport, seemingly having chose the life of the working man over the mobster. Kind of a ripoff of A Bronx Tale, but whatever. So Billy, at around the age of like 21 or something, even though DiCaprio is 30, but whatever, he decides to join the state troopers. But like, we don't really like get a sense of why he does this. Like, obviously his father raised him into a young man who didn't want to participate in a life of crime, but Dignam says like he got a 1400 on his SATs. If he wanted to make his father proud, like, why wouldn't he become a doctor or something instead of a state trooper? And not only does he want to become a state trooper, but for some reason he is convinced to take on an extremely risky undercover assignment. Like, sure, it's for a good amount of money, but most informants are recruited via duress. So like, if a criminal is caught committing a felony, then they will have the option to become an informant as opposed to being arrested. But Billy, like I said, like, he's smart, and like, he's probably got a good chunk of change after his mother's death. So I'm not saying he's set for life, but probably has other options in this. Like, maybe if they put something in like what if they kept Billy's mother alive and he needed to go undercover to cover her medical bills, or maybe Costello was responsible for his father's death, maybe his father was going to testify against him or something. I don't know, just something that would have made Billy want revenge on Costello, just so that would make the whole undercover thing seem more plausible. Even if it was a cliche, at least there would be some motivation for Billy agreeing to go undercover. But all in all, when all is said and done, Billy has more character development than Chan does, his Infernal Affairs counterpart. But this is the thing. Part of the reason Chan doesn't get that much character development in Infernal Affairs is because he is not the protagonist of the film. Lau is. And in The Departed, Billy isn't supposed to be the protagonist, Colin is. Now, Colin is a mixed bag. We are introduced to him as a young kid who is brought under Costello's wing. It's stated that Colin is Johnny Sullivan's son, someone Costello seems to know, but it's also said that Colin lived with his grandmother, so I don't know if they all live together, or his father is dead, or they don't explain this, so whatever. As for who Colin's father is, they don't really get into that. Later on, Berrigan mentions that his dad was a janitor. Okay, not sure why Costello would know him by name, but whatever, fine. The reason I'm asking these questions is because we never really get a sense as to why Colin would fall under Costello's wing. Like, if he was lacking a father figure at home, then that would make sense, but the movie doesn't really get into it. We even skip from Colin as a kid to him as a trooper trainee, so we really get no idea as to what transpired over those years that would have convinced Colin to become a mole for Costello. So we need to find some sort of motivation for Colin to be doing this for Costello. Now, there's this whole overarching theme in the film about fathers and sons, which is pretty on the nose with what with Colin and Costello, Billy and Costello, and of course the whole baby subplot, and yet this father-son thing doesn't really serve as a sense of motivation or drive for any of the characters. During the scene where Colin kills Costello, there is sort of an exchange about Costello being a father figure to Colin, so maybe that's Colin's motivation for being Costello's mole, except the movie sets Colin's motivation for doing so as one of class. As we learn, Colin's father was a janitor, so Colin has aspirations of being something more, with hopes of one day being some sort of politician due to the repeated visual motif of the Massachusetts State House. There's a scene where Colin gets a new apartment, and when the realtor questions mentions Colin's financial situation, Colin reacts defensively. So this shows he's obviously a bit sensitive about his lower class Southie upbringing. He moves aggressively up the ladder in the Stadies, and we get the sense that Colin sees Costello as more of a nuisance than anything else. Like, yeah, he protects Costello, but it's sort of in the sense of like a quid pro quo relationship, as we see Costello tipping off Colin a number of times, which allows him to get promotion after promotion. But yeah, they never seem like they're on good terms, really. Their relationship is seen as strained in several scenes, with Colin worried that Costello's frequent erratic behavior will screw them both over, and it's not like their relationship is ever at any point portrayed as warm or father-like. That is, unless threatening to have someone rape your girlfriend is a benchmark of a healthy and functional paternal relationship. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing all this up about the relationship between Costello and Colin is because I'm going back to the scene where Colin betrayed Costello at the end of the second act after he finds out that he's an FBI informant. Now, Colin, obviously, as is shown, he does this specifically for the reason because he finds out that Costello is an FBI informant and doesn't want his own future put at risk. But in Infernal Affairs, Lau turns on the boss because he has made the decision that he does not want to be a mole anymore. He regrets his initial decision to do so. He enjoys the good guy life as a cop with his wife, and he feels guilt over the death of Superintendent Wong. All of these character moments build to Lau's decision to backstab the boss. He makes the choice to leave his old life behind. Whereas Colin betrays Frank due to self-preservation, which, yeah, it basically leads to the same conclusion, but it doesn't hold the same weight as Lau deciding to leave his life of crime behind. And what really pisses me off about this is that Lau making the decision to leave his old life behind is the whole point of the movie. In Infernal Affairs, the same chain of events play out with Chan discovering Lau is the mole. He meets him on the roof, Chan gets killed, and Lau uses the second mole to cover his trail. Except in The Departed, Colin is killed by Dignam at the very end of the movie for his crimes. In Infernal Affairs, Lau gets away with it. He gets away with it. That is the whole fucking point of the fucking movie. The movie is called Infernal Affairs, which is a play on internal affairs, of course, but the infernal is in reference to hell. The Chinese title is translated to the unceasing path, which is in reference to the lowest level of hell in Buddhism. The opening fucking quote of the film speaks of continuous hell. The whole point is that Lau is supposed to live. He is supposed to get away with his crimes, but at the cost of knowing his actions led to the death of a good man, a man whose life he wishes he could have had. Despite Lau's choice to betray his boss and leave his life of crime behind, his actions come back to haunt him, and Chan's death is his final punishment. He gets to live the rest of his life a free man, with the death of a good man on his conscience. This is his continuous hell. In The Departed, Colin doesn't have this big moment of change because he only kills Costello out of self-preservation, not because of any sort of moral choice or moral change in his character. So, like, Colin probably wouldn't feel that super guilty about Billy's death, which is why Dignam needed to kill him at the end to make him pay for his crimes. What is so fucking weird about this decision to change the ending is that there is actually an alternate ending of Infernal Affairs where Lau comes down the elevator and is arrested immediately. The reason they shot this ending was specifically for mainland China, because the State General Administration of Press, Publication, Radio, Film, and Television, or if that is too much to remember, the SGAPPRFT, Jesus fucking Christ, wouldn't allow the original ending was because they would not allow the portrayal of a criminal going unpunished for his actions. Despite the fact that this is the whole moral dilemma of the movie, and the movie makes very clear that Lau must now live in hell for the rest of his life. But nope, bad guys can't win in communist China, apparently. So this is what's so fucking weird. The Departed, instead of going with the morally complex and tragically ironic ending with Colin living the life he always wanted, yet with the knowledge it came at the cost of a good man's life, Martin Scorsese, known and celebrated for his portrayals of morally complex and difficult characters, opted for the bad guys don't win ending that the Communist Party of fucking China made the original director shoot. This is the same agency that banned Alice in Wonderland because of superstitious beliefs, whatever the fuck that means. They banned Brokeback Mountain because of butt sex. They banned Back to the Future because of time travel. I'm not even fucking making that up. Go look it up. They even banned Martin Scorsese's own from Kundun because the Chinese don't fuck with the Dalai Lama. And you know what other movie is banned by the censorship board in China? The fucking Departed. The Departed is banned in China because during the microprocessor deal scene, Costello implies that the Chinese government is buying them so they can nuke Taiwan. Jesus fucking Christ. What really pisses me off about all of this is because I actually found an early undated draft of the film. It's about 30 pages shorter, thank fucking God, and in this early draft, it is actually revealed that Costello and Billy's dad were childhood friends. Costello was sent to prison at some point and grew to be the gangster we all know, and Billy's dad, who served in the Korean War, decided to forego a life of crime. Now, because Costello and Billy's dad were bros as kids, it is revealed that Costello is Billy's godfather. This makes perfect sense when you watch The Departed. This is why Queenan initially decides to send Billy undercover. This is why Costello decides to take Billy under his wing and even tries to convince him to walk the straight and narrow at one point in the film. This is probably the reason why Costello would have had such a hard time believing that Billy was the mole. And this is probably the reason Costello makes Billy the one his lawyer goes to with the tapes at the end of the movie. A simple omission that fills so many fucking plot holes, I don't know why they didn't keep it. This draft also omits the whole Costello as an FBI informant thing, and actually keeps in the Infernal Affairs plot point with Colin killing Costello because he wants to leave his life of crime behind. However, this initial draft still has Dignam kill Colin at the end, which still completely misses the whole point of the original movie. So even if the studio powers that be were the ones who made Monahan take out the other stuff, I think it's still on him for not getting the original film's whole point. Jesus fucking Christ, what a fucking mess of a movie. I remember seeing this movie when I was like 14 or 15 and thought it was kick-ass, but now I think, like, rethinking about it, I think I was just a bit hypnotized by the all-star cast, Scorsese directing, and thinking how fucking rad it was that they said fuck every other fucking word. But now that I'm older and I'm looking at the film objectively, I can't even begin to understand why it was so well received. So, like, why? I don't care. This movie sucks, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. Fucking damn it. However, there is one silver lining. In one scene where Madeline shows up to Colin's apartment, he is just lounging, but in the script, it notes he's actually watching Audition. I forgot I haven't seen that movie in a while, so I'm gonna go catch that, because I'm pretty sure that is much more of a pleasurable experience than watching The Departed again.